Jen, you know the person on your conference call who doesn't hit mute when they're multitasking?
Oh, yes. Or the coworker who never cleans up after themselves? Well, today we're talking about bad manners at work.
Yep. In increasingly casual business environments, it's easy to let your manners get casual too.
But is your behavior getting in the way of your success?
Bad manners is what we're talking about today.
Dang, bad manners.
I know.
The Speakeasy Podcast, real talk about leadership and sanity in the creative industry. I'm Jen Estel.
And I'm Karen Steffel. Managing creativity in business? We probably have an opinion on that.
No prohibitions.
Clearly, we have cocktails.
The Man of War. This is a pretty good drink. It's a whiskey drink, and it's really sort of smooth. It's got a hint of citrus in it and some lemon juice.
A little sweet, but not overly sweet.
And that's the Contrao that's in there. So it's kind of a nice little bit with these beautiful bourbon cherries in it as a garnish.
It's a nice little treat. So it's really good.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more later.
Absolutely. Sip on that.
Sip on that, folks.
So why are we talking about bad manners?
Because we've all had to deal with them.
Yeah, and I just want to say right at the top here that I am not going to pretend that I don't have one of these bad manners. Like, we all have to be self-aware, right?
Sure.
So I'm not preaching from on high. I might do one of these things. I might have an annoying thing I do. I'm pretty sure I have a couple annoying things I do.
I know I have annoying
just apologizing
things I do.
Broadly for that.
But the catch is, we both live in casual, creative environments, and everybody has this perception that, oh, then the rules are gone and you can wear jeans whenever you want and blah, blah, blah. But there's still a line.
Right.
And the line sometimes is really hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So, hoodies and jeans are totally fine at my office. And we all have an unspoken rule that we know if there are meetings or other places to be, we dial it up a bit, right?
Right.
So, but there are people that don't get that. And there's even hygiene issues. Not at my office, but...
But there could be anywhere. Could be. Well, and we had challenges as well because, especially as women, I'm not going to police anyone's clothing choices, of course. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty open to anything that anybody wants to throw at us, but that doesn't mean our clients are. So we have to be very respectful of both allowing our staff to self-express the way they want to, yet not put our clients in a position where they feel awkward or uncomfortable.
That's right.
So where does that come with regard to manners or unspoken rules? It's a complicated place.
Well, and so how do you, when you're a new hire or when you're deepening a client relationship or a new client relationship, how do you know what the norms are when those types of rules aren't written?
I mean, some of the rules are written.
Sure.
And you should observe or you should ask.
Yeah.
The end.
The end. Okay. Glad we covered that.
No, I mean, and it's difficult as a leader or as somebody who's ingrained in the organization to really even be able to articulate the rules because so much of it is unspoken or unwritten and just baked into the process.
Yeah, and it's cultural.
Sure. And what's okay in office number 1 might be entirely different in office number 2. So no matter how casual your workplace may be, it doesn't hurt to say, what's the norm here? What are the behaviors? What should I expect to wear on a Friday? What should I look out for so that my new coworkers aren't annoyed with me? I think asking those kinds of questions is really respectful and easy.
I think it is respectful. I think it's harder than you think.
Probably true.
Yeah. So let's talk about some superficial bad manners.
Okay.
So I remember, I don't remember who it was, but somebody in my life had a nail clipper next to them. Like they worked in a cubicle farm, but they had a nail clipper next to them. And it was like that person.
That's hygiene.
Yeah. And I don't know. And so it's that snip.
Sure.
And I don't know, that person, for as often as my friend complained about it, that other person must not have had any nails left unless they were also doing their toes, and God knows.
Right.
So, hygiene at work is not great. Now, I do keep a toothbrush and toothpaste at the office in case I have to dart somewhere, but I don't brush my teeth in my office.
No, there's a difference between going to the restroom to use your toothbrush and using it at the conference table next to a coworker.
Ew. So gross.
Which is something we would not do, right?
In the teas, we talked about bad manners in conference calls. People who are there's so many remote workers now. You never really know when you're on virtual calls and things like virtual meetings, you never know if somebody's in an office setting or at home until you hear the dog bark, the toilet flush, the kids scream, the slider door close. It's like, if you're going to walk around and do dishes,
Mute. Yeah. So, and this is really practical stuff. So if you're not speaking on a conference call, mute is a very good idea, because then the dogs and the flushes and the crashes, no one knows.
Right.
When you're on a Zoom or some other visual call, do you pause your video while you're not speaking, or do you let people stare at you while you're brushing your teeth?
Well, I let people stare at me, but I stay focused. I often will, because I have two screens and my laptop is not my primary screen. So I will often say, if you see me looking over here, it's because I'm taking notes, so that they don't think that I'm ignoring on Facebook. And so I try to stay engaged. I think that that style of meeting is really important as professional communicators. I think being able to see people is a huge cue. Like being able to see people's body language is a huge cue. But if you're also working from home and you're on a Zoom, then maybe think about what your background is. Is it your laundry? Can I see your underpants? Or
that would be awkward.
Or is it, your kitchen table or your dining room? Something that looks a little bit more predictable.
Right. And is lighting decent? Is it going to disrupt what people are looking at when they look at your screen? So on another one, here, let me ask you this one. And this is a good one. I don't know the answer. 2 coworkers, and one has something that drives them crazy. Food crunching, pen clicking, something that is a fairly normal behavior. Mm-hmm. Does the other coworker have to police his or her behavior because of their neighbor's particular preferences?
That's a really great question, because, where I come from, I always want to make sure that an environment's comfortable for everyone. I know we can't please everybody, but I do think that if there's something that really drives you crazy, it ought to be known, at least. If in that situation, if you're able to give some space and distance so that I can still do my ticks or my clicks and you can, not want to hurt me, that's a great thing. I don't know. I think those are situational.
I think they're situational too. And that's like going back to the office wardrobe. How do you figure them out?
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's another situational one, at least for me: chronic absence or chronic tardiness. So there's late and then there's like late, right? If you're wandering in just a few minutes after the start time, that's fine. Traffic happens, life happens. But if it's like half an hour late all the time,
right?
Is that a problem? Or do you just assume that people always they put in their time and it doesn't matter and you shouldn't say anything?
As long as the work is done, doesn't matter, right? I mean, our culture at our office is, if you're going to be a little bit late, that's no big deal, but ping somebody. Let them know you're running late. Yeah. And because we're an open environment, the problem with late is every person who walks in the door disrupts everyone who's already working. Mm-hmm. And I can say it because I'm often later than I want to be, and I walk in with my dog, which is a huge disruption, etc. So you have to realize that it's more about, what did that just do to the productivity of the office? Mm-hmm. So chronically late means team meetings can't happen till that last person finally walks in the door. Yep. Answers aren't going out to clients in a timely fashion. So there's annoying and then there's inappropriate.
Yeah, I had a former employee who drove like half an hour to get to work every day. He lived rurally, and he was never here before 9:20. And so my habit over time became to only schedule things to start at 9:30. So it moved from, this is just kind of his jam, to this is impacting what we're able to generate revenue, because we're dependent upon the hourly. But also then it was like, well, clients can't come in and see us until then. I couldn't trust that he could actually show up at 9 if something needed to happen at 9. And when I approached him about it, it was early in my career, and I finally got up the courage, and I was managing somebody who was older than me. And he said, well, you don't pay me to be here. I don't get paid until 9, so I don't ever want to get here early. Because my thing was, I'd like everybody to be here 5 or 10 minutes early so that you're actually working by 9. And he said, well, you don't pay me to get here any earlier. And I said, well, I'm paying you to get here late. And so and he gave me the calculation off the top of his head. If he got there, it's the in 2,080 hours, if he gave me an extra 5 minutes for each one of those hours, this is how much money he lost. So I went back to my office and I did the calculation for how much we couldn't bill because he was half an hour late every 20 minutes,
Sure.
which is really half an hour till you get settled, right?
Sure. Wow.
And I never would have done that calculation had I not been pushed in that way.
And so I think the message I take
Those
there,
are bad manners.
That's bad manners. But that's also, he'd already made that calculation.
And it was intentional.
Yeah. And so there's bad manners which you don't intend to overstep or you don't think you're impacting people. Then there's just being a jerk.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And I think, but all those things are still bad manners, right?
Sure.
It's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Right.
And, there's always those zero tolerance things, and certainly we're talking about things like, fighting or aggression.
Sure.
There's no room for that. Theft.
Right. There's a HR department or an employee manual for a reason.
Yeah.
Because there are some things that are just not tolerable.
Yeah.
100% inappropriate, absolutely fireable offenses. Any employee, any leader needs to understand what those are and know them very well and adhere to them. The end.
Yeah. You have to state those expectations. As a leader, you have to follow them. Right. As if you have to, you have to not only, you're also an employee. As the leader, you're also an employee of the organization. So you need to fall in line with those expectations and lead by example. That's why those expectations exist. You have to put them down in writing so that there are boundaries.
And in some ways, those are the easy ones. Mostly because I would say most people would agree no drugs and fist fighting at the office. Right. That seems fairly easy to attain. But also when they're written down, they're nice and clear. Not hard.
Not hard, but it is very hard to include everything because, there are lots of people who have bad manners that, you would never think to say, sure. Hey, you're TMI person.
Right.
Please don't overshare your escapades.
Weekend, nobody needed to know what happened Friday night in that amount of detail.
Yep.
Right. And I think, too, many of us run into, I would have never thought of that. Like, it has been more times than I wish that I've had to say, who does that? Who would choose to do that? Mm-hmm. Whether it's bad behavior or inappropriate communication, something that would never even occur to me to do in the office.
Yeah.
So, of course, you're not going to put that in the employee manual because you haven't thought about it. And you also don't want to be the overlord who has every tiny little rule.
Right. That's heavy-handed for sure, because we all want to assume the best intent out of people, and we also want to hire people who use logic and reason and who can apply that in group situations.
It's a small thing to ask.
I know. I once used to dread Friday morning coffee, and it was at a time where Friday morning coffee was, we would digest every moment of Seinfeld. It was a long time ago, but we had seen Seinfeld the night before, and we wanted to go back through it, and that was part of our culture. But I dreaded it also because there was one person who I worked with, and I was not the leader at the time. On Thursday nights, he also did poker and porn.
Oh.
So he had his guy friends over, and they would play
not
poker.
Watch Seinfeld.
And not watch Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And then we had to listen to that. And he was a married guy. And the first time he told me, I was like, well, where was your wife? And he was like, well, she either goes out with girlfriends or she just hangs out in the bedroom.
Oh.
It was so uncomfortable. And it never got, I think just the mention, I think at the time for me, just the mention that's like, oh, I freely admitted in a group of mixed company that's where I spent my night. It's just a creeper thing to do. I don't know.
Well, and I think that it is a creeper thing to do. No one wants to know.
Yeah.
But it gets back to the point of, it doesn't matter what my intention is. It's how people perceive or react to what I've done. Mm-hmm. And so bad manners is when you are not being cognizant of how your behavior is affecting the people who have to share space with you.
Yeah.
This isn't family. We don't have to love them. They're not friends that we chose.
Yeah.
They're coworkers for whom we have a shared mission, but maybe not always in a shared affinity.
Yeah.
So the boundaries need to be different than they would be with your casual friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said you have to be cognizant how your actions impact others, because you've had the coworker that's the Debbie Downer that just complains about everything. And that's like, it's almost like working with Pigpen from the Peanuts gang, sure. Right? There's just this cloud always. Now, that person knows that, right?
Probably. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't know that.
Maybe that's just their MO.
Maybe the takeaway for today is that all of us should look at our habits and our behaviors and imagine what they seem like to someone new.
Ooh, I love that.
Do I look overly messy? Am I a big cloud of chaos when I walk in the door? Do I scratch my head to the point where hair is falling out onto the conference table? I know, super gross. That ranks right up there with the clipped nails, right? But it's just very easy when you're comfortable in an environment to let your guard down and not self-assess.
Yeah.
So that's what we're all going to do today is self-assess our bad behaviors.
Yeah, because work is not the same as like your couch at home.
Also, don't clip the nails on the couch.
Please don't.
Please don't.
How about honesty for you? I mean, for me, honesty is an absolute. I'm probably honest to a fault. Maybe that's my annoying habit because I'm very direct. But how about honesty when it's kind of a gray area, right? Because sometimes when one is honest in a professional setting, they can be hurtful.
Sure.
But there's also just dishonesty, overt dishonesty. I know you've had a situation where you've found some dishonesty.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are white lies to keep the peace, such as, no, thank you, I would not like cake today, when what you're thinking is, I hate cherries. I'm not going to eat your stupid cherries, or whatever they are. And then there's lying and manipulative behavior and dishonesty. And we've dealt with that. And the way we deal with it is let people go. The minute you find out, because if someone is going to be dishonest, intentionally dishonest, they probably don't have your client or customer's best interests at heart.
Certainly not yours.
And they don't have yours. And they probably can't be trusted by some of your coworkers either. That's just nothing you want in your environment.
Yeah.
That is probably the epitome of bad manners there, is taking advantage of your employer or your coworkers.
And putting at risk. And I think when people are dishonest or they're cheating the system, so to speak, they're really putting at risk the well-being of the organization that you've worked tirelessly for 20 plus years to create.
Right. And that's the difference between, there are the employee manual things, ethics, and then there are the not employee manual things. Wash your dishes at the end of the day. Don't leave them for someone else.
Yeah.
That does not go in the employee manual in most places, I would assume, but it's standard behavior in most offices.
Is there a really easy snapshot of how you can always bring your A game, good manners to work?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Is it the golden rule?
I think the golden rule is a really good one. And I think a self-reflection of the things that drive you crazy. All of us have a list of things that drive us crazy.
Sure.
Whether it's the pen clicking or mouth noises or listening to your phone call.
Yeah.
Whatever. We all have a list. And if you reflect on your own list, understand the person next to you has a list. And what could you avoid pinging on that list?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are things that as employers we can also do to support. We've already talked about the manual as a set of expectations, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, really just making sure that whether they're handbook expectations or just general rule of play expectations, just making sure that they're known, because those are the types of things that we don't necessarily, especially as a small business, we don't take the time to articulate consistently, especially when things are going well, or maybe as an employer, an issue is in your blind spot. You don't know that it's going on or happening, or that trouble's brewing.
That's true. And I think as an employer, it really serves you well every year or so to maybe reflect on and audit your culture and your environment and really observe what makes people comfortable or uncomfortable. We all get very busy and it's easy to stop observing. And I think as the leader, it's probably important to observe and watch and see where people might feel not at ease or worked up somehow, so that you can maybe feel when you need to change your office culture or make some shifts or clarify some things.
Yeah.
Like no nail clipping and no loud phone calls.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Well, and I think the other two things is, lead by example, adopt them yourself. If you have expectations for others, you ought to be embodying them yourself.
Yeah.
Thinking about what you said earlier in terms of just be cognizant of how your actions impact others.
Yeah, I don't think
seems simple.
Yeah,
but then why do these things happen?
I don't think anyone intentionally sets out to cause dismay and angst, right? Most people don't set out with that intention, except for maybe the fella who constantly comes in 20 minutes late. He might have been a rabble-rouser.
Yeah.
So you don't intend to, but what are the unintended consequences of whatever you're doing with your time?
Yeah.
And how can you change a few behaviors to make the people around you more comfortable? And maybe they will follow suit.
Yeah.
And everyone will be more comfortable and everything will be polite and flowers will bloom and small woodland animals will sing. It will be fantastic.
It will be fantastic. So before we complain about our jobs on social media, let's talk one more time about the Man of War.
Yes.
Because there's nothing to complain about there.
We've got the Woodford Reserve in this one, which we really enjoy. We've used more than one time. And it's got a little bit of sweet vermouth in there. And it's fresh squeezed lemon juice. Pretty good.
And Cointreau.
Cointreau, that's right, which gives it that little orangey bit. And it's served with a bit of garnish, and you should just definitely check it out.
Yeah, and these are no maraschino cherries. These are like really lovely
Boozy
soaked cherries. The
cherries.
Yeah.
So have one of these to build up the courage to talk to your coworker about that really annoying thing they do.
And don't chew your ice when you're drinking this, please. Ice is optional.
Oh, right. I am an ice chewer.
I am too.
I mean, I know my own bad habits, right? I know that I talk to myself out loud, which drives people crazy. I know that I do chew ice if I'm not careful. I have to remember not to do that in front of other people. How about you?
Oh, I laugh really loud and hard. And sometimes I just show up and stare at people. I'm just awkward. I do a lot of awkward things and I'm a goof. Which
that's
maybe is welcome sometimes and sometimes not.
And above all, this is the one that's above all. Just remember to reply all.
Except for when you shouldn't.
Except for when you shouldn't.
There are times where a reply all is just not necessary.
I know it's not. And there are times when it's really logical and people clearly forget how. So just some thoughtful email etiquette goes into this lump as well.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the episode.
If you liked it, share it with a friend. Hey, Karen, what's our next topic?
Ooh, I'm so curious.
Yes, you are.
Oh, join us next time. That is exactly what we're talking about.
Curiosity. See you then.
Cheers.